Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
The Empire of the Suns podcast is brought to you by Sonic. Drive to your nearest Sonic location and don't forget to order your half-price drink or slush anytime in the Sonic app.
Hello there and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. He only misses one episode, folks. That's what everyone says about him. Just one episode, that's it, max, and then he's back. What's up?
The most important episode, the coach firing episode I missed, but thank you for the fill-in and the extra effort on your part.
Shout out Sam Cooper. That was a fun episode with him, day of recording. Not a ton to digest in the moment because we just kind of knew it was coming. And I think the continual process that is going to be this offseason will be reacting and having opinions that we've had for a few months now, to say the least. And that is the what a book called. He said it's been like a slow bleed out for the end of their season. That's kind of what this is now, because it's like, all right, probably knew Bud was going to get fired. We probably knew there was going to be an Ishbia press conference. We probably knew there was going to be some kind of front office shakeup. We probably knew there was going to be a new head coach. We probably know Kevin's getting traded. We probably know Brad's gone. So like those six things are like the last remaining steps from fully putting last year behind us. And I know that like the organization is first and foremost with that thought process and that feeling of like moving forward, but it really applies to us too, the people covering the team. Cause like today at some points I was like, oh man, I just can't wait for just to be, we'll get into the press conference in a minute, but Ishbia said like it'll be undeniable, the changes and like the difference between what you see on the floor this next year compared to last year, just with like culture, identity, yada, yada. And I was just like, oh, I can't wait for just like something different, you know? I just can't wait. What do you think of Bud getting fired before we transition to the press conference?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was the same thing as Frank. At some point, if you judge how the players played, how they reacted to him, how they didn't improve under him, that ultimately falls on the coach, even though I think we can say Frank definitely now it looks like more of a scapegoat than before this season began. Bud's tenure obviously went worse with what we thought was a much better roster, at least to start the season and all that stuff. And so when you are that far under 500, miss the play-in with that roster, with those stars, with those expectations, it makes sense. I'm not surprised. And I think you can compartmentalize he should be gone because it just didn't work. Or even like looking ahead, like he's not the right coach to rebuild this situation. And the whole, like, it's bigger than him, right? I think those are two different things that we'll get into in a little bit, but those are two very different things, but both can be true, I guess. And to me, that's where he landed. Yeah, he got put in a bad spot, but he also did not do, even if he was 10 games better, I think that would be like a much less on Bud situation and more on this roster is just not built to do the thing, which is chase a championship. So that's ultimately, I think, what happened. He failed on all accounts there.
Yeah, the way that I described it with Sam is this was a year later. It was different in two ways with the players and the coaches. One, it was far more clear that the players were to blame. Their blame percentage that you would have given them last year is drastically higher this year. I think no matter how you felt before last year going into this year, but you would also even put more blame on the coach this year compared to last year because there were various in-season moments and trends and stretches that were just simply on coaching. And then there were a lot more things that were just on the way the players went about it. But again, like as everyone hit on, as I wrote and you saw, there was just something Bickley and Murad have been hammering really well. And I think like really needs to be like the main takeaway from his tenure was just like, again, we don't know anything about like what's going on with him, his personal life. We only see him through one vantage point of like doing media interactions with him. So not acting like I know a person when I say this, but he just did, because it's a big thing to say. It just didn't seem like he was ready to coach. And it was just this kind of thing where this amazing opportunity came up. You get to coach Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. You get to do it for the team you were born and raised for. Before, when it was happening, it was under a sketchy ownership situation, to say the least. This one's a lot more concrete. You're not doing so in like a rebuild. You're doing it in a contending now. Like everything just kind of added up for him with this point, and like the similarities to Monty, where we pretty much knew Monty was like, I need a year away, and then the Pistons were like, how's $70 million? And he was like, actually, I don't need that year away. And then what happened? He had one of the worst coaching seasons we've ever seen. Like there's a lack of investment that it seemed like there was there. Again, just from our perspective, we could be wrong, but from our perspective, that's the way that it looked. And if that's the case with anything you do, like not to get all grandiose, but you do that with anything, your heart's not really in it, then what are you going to do?
Yeah. Thoughts on the presser? Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So what'd you think? Today, Matt Ishbia press conference, it was nearly 30 minutes. Credit to him for taking the time to take a lot of questions. With how quickly he talks, respectfully, it was more like 45 minutes. It was quite the presser, a lot to take in. Thankfully, didn't have to just transcribe too much on my end, but I know people like Gerald are going to be up until 4 a.m. because I've sat next to him long enough to know that he transcribes a lot that like I would never dare to transcribe as much as he does. So he's whatever he reads tomorrow morning, I want to read because that man put a lot of work into it. Dwayne, same to him as well. And then Josh Bartelstein and James Jones both spoke, which when the email came in, I had an idea. I figured that Ishbia was going to speak, but didn't know who else was going to speak. Because there has been speculation that Jones could be moving on. The news to drop that day, as we expected, like the various sourced reportings once the Sun season ended, was that Jones's contract expires in June. And there has not been a rush to make a decision just yet, which sounds like a soft exit, I would call it. Not really like a harsh firing, but a soft exit. But there he was talking. My initial takeaway just from those two, because it was mostly about Ishbia, which we'll get to, they were talking like guys who were still going to be with the organization, but just in totally different capacities, I would imagine, because as Gambo's been reporting, there's going to be a front office revamp coming, and a revamp of some sort would include those two guys because those are the two main members of the front office. It's not going to be a change at the very top. Matt Ishbia still owns the Suns, and he's still going to hold the same role that he does. But they're just my takeaway on it was, and the way that I said this on Arizona Sports Night, I'll try and say it a little bit better, but basically there is like a level of play ball you're hoping for as the person sitting in the chair and asking one of the questions that's going to get there, where you're just really hoping that there will be versatility on display in terms of the amount of topics that are covered and like the subjects that are gone into. Like, for example, Burns and Gambo did the gambit. They asked him a lot of different stuff. But they asked him about KD, they asked him about Beal, but he said beforehand he wasn't going to talk about like player specific things or specific moves exactly. So we didn't ask about it per se. They tried and they got their answer of we're not trying to do this, but we're culture, identity, all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the point I'm getting to, is like the other side of it usually is those types of press conferences serve a function of getting a certain message across. And that, like, the way I worded that there sounds like it's with a negative connotation. It's not. But the clear objective there that was achieved was they're embarrassed. He showed growth. How much credit you want to give him for showing growth from last year to this year in terms of what he talked about and his just lack of awareness, it seemed like last year, for like what the perception of the team was, how the fan base was reacting, how they expected him to come out, and the accountability for how bad the season went, the awareness for how bad the season went. It was rather tone deaf, and then this year was not tone deaf. It was to the point there. So that was one, and then two is the main change that he is looking at with saying the changes are coming is establishing a culture and establishing an identity. Where you'll get to this, Kevin, I'm sure, is need a front office and a coach first to help you establish that. So how do you do that? And then like, where does that come in terms of like what kind of culture and identity Ishbia wants, and like the ones that I'm sure the coach and the new front office people are going to be like, yeah, tough team that tries hard, like sounds good. But like, it's also, we're talking about traits and attributes already when the people that are going to collectively be with you to make those decisions seemingly aren't in their positions yet. So it was kind of not confusing, but just, you could describe it better, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I'll stick on that. And one, you appreciate the accountability for saying as the owner, did not create this identity, right? But I would like to ask him, and he actually had a quote today, something like everything runs through every owner, like every trade, whatever. And I don't know if that's necessarily that true. Like, do some of the more detached owners hear of every little smaller trade? I'm not sure. Now, if it's like we're gonna blow past the luxury tax, I'm sure that has to come up. But if it's not gonna impact financials in a spendy way, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Um, but going back to your point, so this is I'm not belittling their jobs in the front office by any means, I hope saying this, but this roster was set after Katie didn't get traded on the trade deadline. So they've had since February, first week, right? Till now. Colin Gillespie, congrats. You get a standard contract if the Suns made the playoffs. Otherwise, roster moves, don't care. Your season has been going south this whole time. You had these months to make decisions on, okay, we're gonna clean house. We have a bad culture. It starts at the top. We're gonna restructure like this. Obviously, they made the Bud decision. That's great. It didn't take a week like the weird Frank thing last year, who, by the way, brought in that culture of hardworking. No one's gonna outwork us. He said that on his intro presser. Not yada yada. But they had all this time to find who was going to set that identity from a basketball perspective, and I do not think it should be on the owner, nor do I think it should be on the CEO and president in Josh Bartelstein, who, by the way, is in charge of the Mercury, by the way, is in charge of the business operations of both teams. He has a lot on his plate. And is it James Jones making decisions? Like, they tried to say that, yeah, like Matt Ishbia is not watching tape, but ultimately he decides from the very mountaintop we're going to trade KD or not, we're going to keep Devin Booker or not, that kind of stuff. And so I just, not that they're making the bad decisions of what we think they're doing of trading KD, keeping Devin Booker, and that's going to mess up the identity that they want, but they're not even, you're right, they're putting the cart before the horse, and they're just making these big decisions before deciding how to do it. And everything's out of order. And I think the one phrase, and I don't remember who used this, it might have been Bobby Marks or an anonymous source in an ESPN story, but it was ready, fire, aim is basically the saying of what they do. Like, they just shoot their shot and then they re-aim and then have to, like, it's just out of order.
Yeah, so I think people could listen to us like focusing on this portion of like the press conference and like this portion of like what the Suns are and what their future entails, and be a bit turned off by it just because, like, well, why does it matter who's making like the decisions and all this kind of stuff? Like, why does this matter so much, and like what you guys are focusing on here? The reason why it matters is because if this is indeed, again, like what you and I believe, this was, to be clear, this was asked twice. Doug Haller initially asked about Ishbia's role in basketball operations. He went on to clarify, and about a half dozen times mentioned that he doesn't watch film. And he is not the person that is saying we should sign this guy, we should trade this guy. Josh Bartelstein later saying that there isn't one signing or trade that you can attribute directly to Matt Ishbia. And what he was saying was collaborative effort. Like, he will be there, and he will be there to enable, is the way that he put it. Like, he will, if they have a obstacle with the salary cap or whatever, it's like, oh, we're worried about the luxury tax, whatever, that's fine, you can do it. I followed up on that and just asked, like, are you the lead decision maker with these types of things? And then he again went into a multi-example answer, just basically using that line that you said about like other owners, and then some other sort of examples. Like in the earlier answer, he mentioned like he wasn't the one who decided they should draft Ryan Dunn, things like that, right? But there wasn't like a clear, definitive, like, I am or I am not. And again, that's important for us to know, because if he is not, and like that turns out to be the case, then them changing out the front office, moving in new people actually matters, because then this entire thing and how it happened and everything that went poorly. And again, I think a huge misconception and a really bad pattern that has emerged is like, oh, this is all because of the Beal trade. Oh, this is all because of the Durant trade. It's like, well, no, it's because they played lifeless basketball.
Yeah.
And like how much of that is attributed to those two guys? How much of it is attributed to Devin Booker, the coaches, whatever. The problem is they played like lifeless, spiritless basketball for 2 straight seasons. Their season ended effectively at the same exact time, mid-December. You saw all the garbage that we saw for 2 straight years at that exact time. And it was like, oh, here we go again. And I remember sitting down and talking with you before whatever podcast we did the week before Christmas and being like, here we go again. Like, this is just going to be the same year. Again, maybe it's going to be a little bit worse. Maybe it's going to be a little bit better, but the thing we're going to see on the floor is the same exact thing. So to ensure that this is not a systemic, I guess is the right word to use, like issue, and next year we're not going to see this same crap again, you need to know who is doing this stuff and who isn't. And I came away from the press conference not being sure, but what I can say is, and I included this on ArizonaSports.com, based on the reporting we've seen about the biggest moves that the Suns have done since Ishbia is in, it is mostly attributed to his line of thinking and just him directly. I looked it up. In the McMahon story, James Jones and like the name Jones is mentioned twice. Once when Tyus Jones is mentioned and once when James Jones is mentioned. Ishbia is in there 34 times. In the Woj story, when Kevin Durant was traded, Jones is mentioned once. Ishbia is mentioned 9 times, and that includes Ishbia. Like, it could say like the Suns front office did not want to let go of Mikal Bridges, but the story literally says Ishbia did not want to let go of Mikal Bridges. So like that's the part where it's difficult for us to fully get there. So,
or look at James Jones, how he operated under Robert Sarver. He was the guy who said, "I have this service that I can look at, Western Kentucky basketball games and scout from my computer. We don't need to have this robust staff. We do not need a G League to succeed. We're concerned about 15 guys on our NBA roster." Guess what they do when the new owner comes in? They start spending, 1, and then 2, they get a whole new G League team after owner just sold it. Like, this isn't a James Jones thing. He's operating under the context of what he's provided by the ownership and what the owners tell him are the objectives and the money and all that good stuff. So, like, I think it's really kind of cool that he's so versatile and can change tunes and be like, yes, I will do the best of my abilities and take my strengths and succeed under 2 different owners. We already had a podcast on him. But to just look at how he operated under 2 owners, I think kind of answers the question of how much he's in charge. Yes, I do believe he 100% was drafting Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro, and the guys above him were signing off and agreed with him and that kind of stuff. That's how I see it. I could be completely wrong. But when you get into trades, yes, that's different stuff. That's big money stuff. That's financial stuff. And that ultimately comes down to the owner, especially in this situation where it's pretty clear, like, he's got to sign off. Any owner would have to sign off on these things.
And so again, like for the why this all matters and like making it this big deal or whatever, again, I'm not trying to make it a big deal. It's just, we watch a press conference. What are our takeaways from it? This is my takeaway from it. Sometimes, it's not the most like popular thing. Again, like there were certain questions asked that just like didn't really get answers. Like we tried to ask about the future of the front office and like did Ishbia talk to Bartelstein and Jones about their roles yet? Like that wasn't answered. Like there were certain questions to like find different things to talk about, to be honest, that weren't addressed. So why all of this matters, and you were dancing around it there, and I'll just say it like succinctly. That second main takeaway, again, like second main goal of this whole talk, all the talking, was culture, identity, having a style of play, toughness. Like we want people who grind, we want people who have heart, all this kind of stuff. Haven't we already seen exactly what it looks like when James Jones gets a James Jones roster and a James Jones team and know what that is? We saw it before. It got them to the finals. Now, a lot of the players that James got or still was targeting at the time do match the guys that they've gotten over the last 3 years. I'm saying this as a way to say like James isn't blameless here. Like he deserves a lot of blame for how this has spiraled, because with everything we talked about, the 3x5 index card, the skill and talent more so above like raw physical attributes, that has completely caught up to them. That's there for sure. But in terms of like Ishbia said at one point in this press conference, like, what we need to define what Phoenix Suns basketball is. Like, we knew a couple years ago, and like what changed from then to here. So that's where we're at, and why this matters going into next year so much is because if anything is somewhat similar to next year as it has been the last 2 years, if they share similarities just even a little bit, now you're just really worried about how this team can get built in any sort of fashion, let alone as a contender, in a rebuild, in a retool, whatever like roster building term that you want to use. Now we will have, at least I will have, like extreme doubt. The way that I worded it on the site is like he has to earn trust back from Suns fans, because I don't think a lot of Suns fans like trust the front office right now, and rightfully so. But can he build that? Can they build that up this year and get it right? I thought like not the it was a big takeaway for me was the line where he said like patience isn't my strong suit, but I will be patient when things are working. So it's like, okay, how do we get stability? Which is the one thing I've been harping on a lot the last couple of months. Like, how do you get stability? It's by them getting it right this next year, because if they don't get it right, that patience is not going to be there, and more things are going to change like crazy, which you can say, okay, like, of course you should like change a bunch of things when it's not working, but then are we just going to keep changing it every single year over and over again? So it's just, if all of this goes right, and this is where you can go to like the picks, Booker, Durant, Beal, what you do with all of them, whatever. Like if this goes moderately right, you should be in a pretty good spot basketball wise within 3 to 5 years. You should be in a pretty good spot. Now, am I sitting here saying they're contenders again? No, but you should be in a spot where, okay, you've established these things that he talked about. You now have like a level foundation to do with, and you've got a good to pretty good basketball team, something like that, right? But if this goes wrong, you can times that by 2, maybe even by 3. Like it really could take that long for them to get out of this if it's another 1 or 2 change everything, it's not working kind of situations.
That's sort of the thing. I'm not even that pessimistic, and I guess that's why I'm super curious about this offseason, regardless of who they hire, because I think there's a chance next year could be pretty much stripped down around Book, and you're like 2019, 2020, where it's, yeah, you're not a playoff team, but you're competent. You build that identity quickly because you hire the right coach, right? Like Monty's first year, like we knew who they were. Yeah, they weren't the most talented, but they had the pieces. You build the culture with a Ricky Rubio, and you go from there, and then you start re-attracting players, and that's where the being a good ownership group actually will matter again, in 2 years, 3 years. So I think that's completely on the table. It's just like, obviously the functionality of getting there financially is incredibly difficult. And that's why if you trade Kevin Durant, for example, I'm just throwing a name out, Amen Thompson from the Rockets, draft picks. You have a good piece. Maybe you get 2 pieces from that deal who are for sure rotation guys who make a big difference. You have to hit on draft picks, obviously, again. Maybe you attract free agents in a couple years. So it's going to take time, but I still believe there's like a path to being respectable next year and gaining trust, even if it's not, oh, we're chasing a title next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree too, to be clear. I think there's a half decent chance they win more games next year. I don't think
it's not hard, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's totally screwed next year and the year after, but I'm saying in terms of us getting to a point of like, okay, they've figured out how to like do this,
gotcha,
for lack of a better phrase. Because right now I have no idea if they can do this right now.
Yeah.
Just based on the last 2 years and how erratic everything has been. I don't know if we can sort of get there. So I think basically that was my main and your main takeaway as well, was just like, for lack of a better term, like power structure, and just how exactly the decision-making process goes for all 3 of these guys, how it is going to change here in the next couple of days, maybe the next couple of weeks, depending on how long this takes and how it goes into the future. I wrote a story this week, and people were very sad while they were reading it, and I apologize, but like that might be how things go here for a while. Where I ran through all the draft picks that they have, and it's like, if you want to sit here and say by 2028 the Suns are in a really good position, that would mean that they hit on picks in the 20s, a pick in the 20s, and then a late second round pick in 2025. They don't have a draft pick in 2026. Or they have a second rounder, I want to say. I'll pull it up right now as I'm talking, but and then in 2027, that is when the second pick begins, which will likely be in the 20s again. That is, of course, it's the Cleveland, Minnesota, Utah mess. That's the second pick of those. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to like those picks hitting, to be clear. But to your point, and something I pointed out in the story, you've just got to get really lucky somewhere. And that sounds like very pessimistic, to go back to that word. But like the Derek White trade, like look at 2 trades from this year. Like, is Josh Giddey going to make 14 All NBA teams? No. But he looks like he could be like a building block for Chicago, like one of their building blocks. Does he need to be the second best player on a title team? Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like they have a building block. Like, can you pick up a building block somewhere? Portland got Denny Avdia, and that was one of the weirdest trades of the last couple of years, where everyone kind of looked around like, what that for that much? And like for them, like why are they getting? And then he, especially in the last couple of weeks of the season, has been amazing. And at the very least, again, he is like a building block. It's like, okay, can you get 3 or 4 more of those guys next to Devin Booker within the next 2 to 3 years? Like, can you do that? That's more of what I'm talking about. And if things are, again, all over the place, changes are happening constantly, just up and down we go. Booker's at 200 teammates now instead of like 130, whatever he's at right now. That is where it will just sort of be impossible to build that foundation. And what will you be building it with? Like, what are the picks that you have sort of at that point? And that's where it gets just really tricky. I think it gets tricky.
Did you see the stat that of the Suns coaches since Torey Lovello has been the D-backs manager?
Yeah, it's not great, right?
I didn't include Hornacek. I think it was at least maybe Hornacek, Earl Watson, Jay Triano. Oh, got it. Where are we at? Jay Triano, is that Igor?
That's
Monty,
Igor, Monty, yeah.
Frank, Bud. Yeah, very fun. Good context.
Not very fun.
Well,
at all. So yeah, there is a second round pick in 2026, just to confirm that. There's so much pick stuff that I was looking through.
Well, that's why you have to trade Kevin Durant, I guess.
Yes.
Because then you have higher draft picks than that, hopefully.
Yeah, like if you can somehow, and Mark Stein reported earlier today that he thinks it's like less likely now that Houston trades Kevin Durant, but like the whole reason they would trade for Kevin Durant is if they flame out in the playoffs, and the playoffs haven't happened yet. So kind of need to wait and see. Like they feel that way right now because they think they're going to the Western Conference Finals probably. It's like, okay, well, what if you get bounced in 6 by the Warriors? Like, how do you feel? How do you feel then when your crunch time offense is absolutely miserable and you've got no one who can create their own shot consistently?
Jimmy Butler just bullies Jalen Green, and something like that. Yeah,
it could turn into that. So again, apologies to Suns fans for not the way this season has gone, but the way that it has inspired us to react. I guess I should say, because that has been like, it didn't even really. I always kind of felt this way unless we were going to get like the most like direct concrete stuff said today. Like it was just kind of how I was feeling about this in general, just with the way the last 2 years have gone. And again, the overwhelming chunk of this is that they just made 2 huge gambles that did not pay off. Like all this stuff, like the Nick Richards trade hasn't worked out great, but there's not a ton of like huge, fantastic blunders in here. And the last thing that I'll cite again is for Suns fans who are going to be quick to like Ishbia, sell the team, get out of here. I know that what matters the most to you is the encore product. I totally understand, but he's nailing everything else so far. So if there's just a brief handle on that side, then you're doing cartwheels with your $2 hot dogs in one hand and cartwheeling with the other.
It happens. I don't know if you remember, but the the reason he sold the team aside, Robert Sarver did learn, convinced Monty, and James, I guess, in some fashion, like hands off to some degree. You guys are in charge of the culture. They got to the NBA Finals under that ownership. Like, people learn. That's all I'm saying. And
Yeah.
also, this is 2.5 years. It's not even 3 full years. And Matt Ishbia is at least recognizing mistakes. Like, it's hard not to recognize the mistakes he's made. So at least he's doing that. So it's on this summer.
You're saying we shouldn't look directly into the camera and say he's on pace to be the worst owner in the history of the sport?
No.
Okay, cool. Now what we are
Presidential
saying,
candidates might say such things.
it's just a turning point. Is that fair? This feels like a turning point. This moment right now, this in the next, like from now until 2 summers from now is like a big turning point of like, okay, what is this experience actually going to be like under this ownership, basically?
You know,
If I had to guess, by the way, I think he figures it out, to be clear. I don't think it's going to turn out bad. I think it's going to turn out good.
Yeah,
If anyone cares about that.
Here's a fun fact, though. Being from Michigan, the funniest part about all this is like when I think of like super teams and just putting a bunch of stars that don't make sense together, I think it was it 05 Lakers, 04-05 Lakers that had Gary Payton and Karl Malone,
Yes.
and they lost to the Pistons, right?
Yeah, that was
In the
04.
finals?
Yeah.
Okay, 04. And it was just like, yeah, like the team with a bunch of kind of semi all-stars because they have an identity and they're not just paying for superstars. Although Gary Payton and Karl Malone kind of washed them, but still. Anyway.
But it's like, but the Pistons were like the misfits too, where like Chauncey's career had gotten stabilized somewhat by the time he got to Detroit, but it still was not to the point that it was at. The Ben Wallace story, well documented, Rashid all over the place. Tayshaun Prince late pick kind of deal. So that's a good example to sort of bring up. All right, so what's next? Is there anything else, by the way, from the presser? But again, like there was a lot said. But culture, identity, and again, that's great. That's good. That should be the goal of the organization. I feel like
it's
obvious to say.
I think the seeing that they're self-aware was good, but that obviously doesn't mean anything. It's more of the actions ahead are going to tell us a lot.
We do see people far too often in that position just completely oblivious all the time. So when that happened last year, you were like, oh no, is this one of those things? And it's not one of those things.
Yeah, like head coach hire will say a lot about direction, obviously. It's like if you hire a younger developmental guy who can connect, blah, blah, blah. Are you hiring someone just to connect with stars? Like who are you hiring and what does that say? What was their identity if they were a basketball player, that kind of stuff.
Ready for me to predict the rest of the offseason?
Yeah, go.
Okay, we're recording this April 17th, Thursday. I would guess that we know what the front office is by April 23rd. So I think within a full calendar week, we will know. They will hire a coach on May 5th. So that's like a week and a half after the front office has been in. So that's like a week and a half of interviews, things like that, right? May 5th. I'm going to say Beal is stretched and waived on May 17th. No, May 16th. We do Friday dumps here. Absolutely. May 16th. And then KD is traded June 10th.
I think KD is going to be around the draft thing.
You think it's going to be like the negotiations aren't really going where we want them to prior to the draft? We got to
blow up the night before into that day or something.
I think this is just the thing that I normally do where it's like I'm hoping that it's done by then, but it's just not going to be done by then, you know? Because I just I would actually hate that. Can I be honest? I would hate that because I want to just talk about the kids they draft. I don't want to. I'll talk about Kevin. That's fine. Like it's the end of the Kevin Durant era. It should be the main thing we talk about, but it would just take the focus away from the kids they're going to draft, which is the important thing for the future.
It's going to be a 2-pod one pod that we have to split in half in one sitting type of day, I think.
Oh, that's gonna be like a 3 a.m. night. I hate that. Not a huge fan of that.
Here's my thing. Like I said earlier in this pod, I hope they've already, or at least Matt Ishbia has put a lot of thought into what he wants to do with the front office to get that situated very quickly. Because, like, again, very big offseason. You're trading Kevin Durant probably. Please figure out who's in charge of doing so.
All right, rapid fire playoff picks. You ready?
Oh God.
That did not sound like someone who is ready. Whenever
It's
you ask
not,
someone if
but
they're
go.
ready and they say, "Oh God,"
Yeah.
that is not when they're ready. OKC against whoever they're playing in the first round. Do you think they give up a game?
No.
OKC in 4 for me. Nuggets, Clippers. What do you got?
Clippers in 6.
I've got the Clippers in 5. I think that stylistically, it is disrespectful to Jokic with how good he's been this year to say he could go out in 5 games, but I have watched a very inferior Nuggets team, like very shorthanded to be clear, not nearly as injured as they're far more injured in those instances, but I've seen the points to which it only matters so much. I'll say it that way. I think Zubac is having an incredible year. Harden's been really, really good. I can't believe I'm picking a Harden team to advance
a Kawhi
past
team.
the first round, let alone, and then a Kawhi team as well. But I think to like state it plainly, I think they're the second best team in the West, like by far. I think there's a big gap between the second best and the third best. I think there's tier drop downs for each, and I'll go there. Lakers, Wolves.
Lakers in 7.
Wolves in 7.
Okay.
More on that from me in a second. Rockets, Warriors.
I think Warriors in 6.
I've got Warriors in 6 as well. I not really joked about it last year, but like Houston's offense is just so brutal most of the time. And in the playoffs, especially against a awesome defensive team, it's a Şengün series if the Rockets win it. I'll put it that way. Like Şengün is the best player in the series, non-Steph. And then like Amen Thompson is the next Kawhi, Sean Marion, whoever, like God perimeter defender, Scottie Pippen, you want to say, and
I
he just
haven't
locks up
seen
Steph.
how bad is Jimmy's ankle, I guess. I don't know.
There is that as well. He was doing the playoff Jimmy thing early where it's like, and there goes Jimmy Butler. He can barely walk, it looks like, as he's got 39 points.
Yeah.
The standard. All right, second round. Thunder, Clippers. I've got the Clippers losing in 7 to the Thunder. Just if I could get a guarantee that Kawhi and Harden are going to not be hurt, then I would pick the Clippers. But I just can't sit here and believe that for like 3 weeks, things are going to go right for them. For Harden in the postseason or for Kawhi with health, I just can't believe it. But as you can tell, I'm that close to picking the Clippers. Just because, again, I think the Thunder are still a year away if they got tested, but I don't think they're going to get tested.
I think the Clippers, I mean, I felt like I'm kind of with you. I can't believe in the Clippers, except I always believe in Ty Lue is going to make a really tough series out of it.
All right, so we both got Thunder. I've got Thunder in 7. You have got Warriors, Lakers. I've got Warriors, Timberwolves. I've got Wolves in 6. I think the script here, Anthony Edwards takes out Kevin Durant last year. He takes out LeBron James and Steph Curry in back-to-back years, all this face of the league nonsense. There you go. There's your guy. He took out the 3 guys.
Who's more fragile? That's all I'm thinking of. Between
I hate that I have the Wolves in the Western Conference Finals because they've been so inconsistent this year, but Ant's just been so awesome that I think that, and I saw playoff Ant up close, and I think that it's a real thing. Like he steps up. I have
no idea how good the Lakers defense has been.
It's actually been their strong suit. Offense has been the issue. Yeah. Not fun stat for them, Kevin. They're not outscoring teams this year when Luka and LeBron are on the floor together. Not a fun stat.
Weird. Okay.
That's kind of weird.
I'll still
There's
go.
too much. Okay, there's too much funny business with LeBron net rating stuff where I'm not going to pick them to go very far. I have them losing the first round. You're on Warriors here?
I'll go Warriors in 6, I guess.
Okay. I've
Are they
got Thunder in 6 to the finals. I'm sure you've got the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, rapid fire on the East. We'll go even quicker. Cavs advance over the trash team that they play.
Yes. Yes.
Pacers, Bucks. This seems like a Pacers in 5 or 6, and the Bucks are done. Is Giannis going to get traded? That kind of thing.
Pacers in 7.
Okay. The fun one, Knicks, Pistons.
Knicks in 6.
I agree. I think Cade is ready for the postseason, but it's also his first postseason. You know how I always feel about that.
The rest of that roster, I just don't trust. Yeah.
Oh, Celtics Magic. Goodness gracious. That's a basketball series. Oh my God.
Sweep.
Yes. We both got Cavs Pacers.
Cavs in 5?
I think 5.
Yeah.
I think the Cavs are incredible.
Yeah.
Knicks and Celtics. This is like a please can the New York Knicks play to their potential series? Because I think it's Celtics in like 4. If the Knicks are just kind of what they've been all year, for lack of a better way of putting it. But I think if the Knicks actually reach their potential, they can actually play defense when they have 3 incredible perimeter defensive talents, I'll phrase it as.
If I cared, I would look up how they've matched up. Do you know what that series has been? Because I actually think...
I believe the Knicks have not beat the Celtics, the Cavs, or the Thunder. There's some stat like that where they're playing against the best teams in the league. They get killed, which is not a good sign. Celtics in 5. I don't believe in the Knicks. I wish I did.
I'll go Celtics in 6 because I think the Knicks, in theory, match up decently. But yeah, they're not close.
Cavs, Celtics.
This is just my heart. I want Cavs in 7.
I've got Celtics in 6. There's
The wear
too
and
much
tear of 2 years in a row catches up to the Celtics. Something.
I really want to pick the Cavs, but based like again, there's so much change for them last year, 2 years ago, coaching staffs, all that kind of stuff. But like the way Jared Allen played like last postseason, like there's a lot of like, is Evan Mobley going to be the guy for like a whole postseason when there's been blips of inconsistency? Oh, I really want to pick the Cavs with you. I can't do it. All right, you've got Thunder Cavs. I've got Thunder Celtics.
Guess I'm going Thunder in 6. Is this what I had before the year?
You might have.
Remember. I probably had Celtics.
I picked the Knicks to make the finals. That made a lot of people happy.
I might have done that. I don't know.
Man, I don't know. This is very difficult.
I'm sticking Thunder just because I want to stick to my guns, and I know I picked them, I think.
I've got Celtics in 6. Like it's one of those years where I'm not very confident in the Celtics in terms of being up there with those two teams, but I think that pedigree is a real thing.
They're good.
I remember Christmas. I wanted to ask Book because Mikal always goes to like that shoulder leaner, you know? And Chris was guarding him and like with a minute left. And it was one of those things where Chris was like, I am going to activate greatest defensive point guard of all time, Chris Paul, and I know exactly how you play. So he just sat on the shoulder leaner for like 8 straight seconds as he drove around, and then Mikal just hit like a fadeaway going the other direction. So I would ask Book about it, and then he said he saw it, and I was like, do you think like the Knicks have a chance like this year? And he's like, I don't know, man. Like the Celtics have just been there before. And he knows far more about basketball than I do. And I know that applies more to the Knicks per se than the Cavs, but it feels like the Cavs have been together for like 9 years, but it hasn't been that long, you know. It has been for Boston.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that was fun. Thank you for entertaining me with that. I appreciate that. The on the fly stuff. I figured we should have some sort of playoff thing, you know.
I was mildly decisive after the rough start.
We haven't talked about this off mic yet, but I would assume still weekly episodes up until the end of like free agency.
We'll probably have content. We're going to be talking. Look, we have coach hire. Oh, okay. They shouldn't hire a coach first. Please don't hire a coach first. Please fire people in the front office or hire people in the front office first. So that, in theory, should happen soon, right? I think we'll
Again,
be good.
I think it's got to happen within a week. Like the advantage that you have in having an opening right now is that you get to interview everyone before the teams that might be in the position. Like Denver's like still going to be going for a while. Like you can have a head start on getting your guy. Now I'm sure there'll be head coaching candidates will be like, actually, I want to hear from the team that wants to interview me that Nikola Jokic plays for, like one of the greatest players of all time. That's the best player in the league. I would like to hear from him. But yeah, I don't know. Front office, maybe we'll podcast, maybe not. That might be kind of like an uneventful sort of thing because again, we hit on a lot of it now. But head coaching hire for sure, and then we gotta pull the trigger on draft stuff eventually.
Yeah.
But what picks will they have? Well, I don't know. How do we like talk?
We'll pretend they have every single pick. We'll break down
the late lottery for no reason at all.
Okay, except not Cooper Flag. We won't talk about Cooper Flag.
Okay.
Probably.
All right, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. As always, again, the people especially listening to this point very much appreciate you. And hopefully you have been able to move on in the ways that like I was talking about being stuck in at the start of the episode, where I think everyone has kind of been able to put the season past them. Not so much looking forward to next season, but just kind of getting a little breather for a couple of months and then you can come back when KD's trading. You can come back on draft night. Maybe that'll be on the same night. I think that's a good strategy. That's fine with you. We'll be back more times than that though. And we'll talk to you then. Goodbye.